In section 3.2, we're going to look at classifying triangles, and when we classify triangles, we generally classify them in two different ways. The first way is by angles, and just like we talked about a few chapters ago, there are three different angles that we're going to classify our triangles by. The first is an obtuse triangle, and in an obtuse triangle, we have one obtuse angle. Remember, obtuse means it is greater than 90 degrees. And in this triangle, you see we have one obtuse angles and then two acute angles. So one obtuse angle and two acute angles in our obtuse triangle. In our next triangle, a right triangle, we have one right angle, which we've talked about already. This little square in the corner means it is a right angle, 90 degrees. And that makes our other two angles in our triangle acute. Okay, and then our last triangle is called an acute triangle, and in this triangle, all three of our angles are acute. And remember, acute means less than 90 degrees. When we talk about the angles in a triangle, it is always important to remember that the sum of the measure of the three angles of a triangle always equals 180 degrees. There's always 180 degrees inside of a triangle. That is a piece of information that we are going to use a lot in geometry, so it is a good thing to remember. Okay, the second way we classify our triangles is by the sides. And obviously a triangle always has three sides, but the first way we can classify our sides is having no sides congruent, and that is called a scalene triangle. So if we draw one off to the side, this would be an example of a scalene triangle. This side is different from this side and different from this side. The number of little tick marks on there tell me all three sides are different. Okay, then our next type of triangle is called an isosceles triangle, and in this triangle at least two sides are congruent. So if we have our isosceles triangle with two sides congruent, it would look something like this. And here I would label both sides with one little tick mark. That tells me that my triangles are congruent. If I labeled, or my sides are congruent. If I labeled ABC, I would know that side AB is equal to BC. Okay, my next type of triangle is called an equilateral triangle. And in an equilateral triangle, this means that all three of my sides are congruent. So I'll draw it off to the side again. If I put a tick mark on all three sides, that means all three sides equal. So we have three types of triangles classified by angles and three types of triangles classified by sides. I just want to look a little bit closer at our isosceles triangle because we will be talking about this in our next unit, and it's good to just introduce it here. If we have an isosceles triangle, there are different parts that we refer to on our isosceles triangle. So if I were to label my sides here, I call this CAB, And I'm going to label these two angles in the corner, and this side is different than my other two. So when we look at this isosceles triangle, our two sides here, AC and AB, are congruent. We call those our legs. Our legs are the two pieces that are the same on our triangle, AC and AB. That makes our base, the bottom of our triangle, the side that is different, so that would be CB. Then when we look at the angles inside of our isosceles triangle, the two sides that are the same, if you look across from those two sides, if you go across to the opposite angles, those angles are always going to be the same as well. And we call those angles our base angles. So this would be angle C and angle B. That leaves the top of our triangle, angle A up here, as our vertex angle. And there's two lines in here because that angle A is different from B and C. So angle A is our vertex.